Welcome to the channel. Attention-grabbing fact first. Most 1970 Lincoln cent pennies from the US Mint are common, but history shows that extraordinary value comes not from the normal coins, but from the iron-heart rarities, errors, transitional strikes, and near-myth misprints that somehow escape vaults and land in everyday hands. And the story of the 1970 Lincoln cent begins with a nation riding high after the moon landing of 1969, when economic optimism was thick. Copper demand was rising, and the U.S. Mint was producing billions of cents using primarily 95% copper, 5% zinc composition, while quietly testing alloys behind government doors, and at the same time, the public remained unaware that major mint facilities such as the Denver branch were running high-volume production on older mechanical presses prone to strikes, clashes, die cracks, grease-filled mint marks, double hub impacts, and planchet shifts, conditions that would later define legends in the numismatic world. Coins forever tied to the name of the 16th President, Abraham Lincoln, whose iconic bust designed by Victor David Brenner had appeared on the obverse since 1909, but 1970, especially for the Denver-struck coins, was a year of intense production stress because the mint was balancing public demand with internal material experiments, causing occasional transitional pieces, off-center gems, and incorrectly struck mint marks to slip through inspection, and while a standard 1970 Lincoln cent is worth only its face value in everyday commerce, collectors always hunted for the misfits. The double-die obverse where Lincoln looks like he's vibrating on history's timeline, coins sporting dramatic die breaks that form raised canyons over the fields, cents where the D mint mark disappears under a grease plug, making people decades later swear they found a no mint mark. Denver coin, off-center strikes where the portrait migrates like a tectonic plate, clipped planchets shaped like bitten moon crescents, lamination errors where the copper peels like a sunburn, broad strikes without the retaining collar that make the coin expand like history refusing to stay contained, and most fascinatingly, the rare 1970 transitional experimentation era pieces where unintended alloy mixes or foreign planchets might be struck under US dies, creating coins that shouldn't exist at all. And the history of value inflation in era coins exploded in the 2000s when online marketplaces such as eBay popularized global listings, vaulting mint errors into the mainstream spotlight, later amplified by grading companies including PCGS and NGC who authenticated only the most dramatic specimens, preserving them in tamper-evident slabs. And viral numismatic stories often reference massive modern sale moments such as the 2010 auction record for an elite Lincoln cent error validated by major graders. And although those headline-making coins were one-of-a-kind masterpieces, they inspired a generation to check pocket change for 1970-era anomalies, particularly Denver pieces, because that mint had built a historic reputation for high-speed output and occasional quality escapes, and documented era categories most valuable to advanced collectors included double-die obverse verified by hub doubling on the date or devices, strong off-center strikes with at least 50% of design intact, major cut breaks where part of the die breaks completely away forming a large raised blob, and clean authenticated transitional planchet strikes that can be scientifically contextualized using XRF testing tied to experimental years. And many important academic numismatic references were archived by institutions such as the American Numismatic Association who preserve the history of minting anomalies. And collector enthusiasm peaked again in the mid-2010s when social media numismatic channels began storytelling, often invoking historical wonder by comparing rare coins to cultural milestones like the 1970 release of Let It Be, making people link pennies of the same year to the emotional atmosphere of a transformative era. And the biggest money attached to 1970 cents always came from authenticated errors, not mass-produced circulation pieces, with dramatic slabbed pieces occasionally fetching five-figure sums depending on severity, condition, and certification. While the ordinary billions remain everyday collectibles, and the technical causes behind these anomalies were later studied through obsolete press mechanics once documented by mint historians and mechanical failure analyses, explaining how overstressed dies, misaligned collars, loose press components, and human oversight under high quotas produced coins that look like glitches in time, And yet it is these glitches that write the story of fortune in coin history, because collectors don't pay for the ordinary, they pay for improbability. Narrative, eye appeal, die-state drama, and authentication certainty. And the historical hunt for these coins frequently surged around commemorative years such as 2009, the bicentennial of Lincoln's birth, when the Mint released 2009 Lincoln Cent series, which reignited fascination with all earlier Lincoln Cents including 1970D, and advanced collectors built checklists that included searching for die-clash shadows under Lincoln's chin, double eyelid errors, RPM mint-mark repunched varieties where the D shows secondary impressions verified in attribution guides, zinc-coated planchet mistakes, and high-grade original red RD pieces that could visually showcase the error instead of wear. And although face values never change by collecting, market values change wildly when an error coin is authenticated, and high-profile auctions sometimes routed through heritage auctions prove that history's most valuable cents were always freak results of mint pressure. And profit stories often concluded that those owning authenticated high-grade errors should consider sale paths including large auction houses, online auction platforms, or direct collector networks, but always through formal certification channels to protect credibility. And now the collector energy that drives virality is the idea that pocket change can hide tiny miracles, so every 1970D penny is a ticket to possibility. Every rim may reveal a clip, every field may carry a break. Every date may double, every mint mark may hide under grease, and every coin deserves a second look. Because the real wealth in this history was always born from minting imperfection, carrying unstoppable collector demand fueled by authentication from top graders, storytelling inspiration from numismatic organizations, and secondary market liquidity from global auction platforms. And that is why the 1970D Lincoln Cent remains one of the most checked modern cents, not for what it usually is, but for what it almost never is, a coin that slipped through safety gates of U.S. mint production chaos to become a trophy. And although ordinary 1970D Lincoln Cent coins do not carry million-dollar values, history proves that authenticated mint errors can transform perceived worth into legitimate market power. So the true takeaway from the 1970D cent story is this: big money in coin history was never minted on purpose, it was minted by mistake, discovered on purpose, authenticated on purpose, and sold with evidence. And if you want to hunt real valuable errors from this era, focus on dramatic error categories, not exaggerated claims. Check coins under magnification for doubling or die breaks, weigh suspicious pieces for composition anomalies, and always confirm through third-party certification, because that is where true historic coin money lives. And if this story opened your curiosity vault, here's the final truth everyone should hear. 99.9% of life-changing Lincoln cents are still just dreams until graded, authenticated, and proven, but 100% of legends start with someone checking a single penny. So right now start checking yours. And if you love this deep dive into coin history and the thrilling world where mint mistakes become market treasure, don't forget to smash like, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this story with someone who has pennies sitting in jars, because the next great discovery always begins in silence before it roars across history. Like and subscribe for more coin legends, collecting secrets, error coin hunts, and stories of unexpected value. Next, 1975D Lincoln Cent penny, a small coin struck at one of America's oldest minting facilities during a year when the world looked calm on the outside but minting floors were loud. Press gears were spinning, die hubs were stamping steel with intense mechanical pressure, operators were feeding planchets in massive volume, dies were cracking microscopically and sometimes dramatically. Mint marks were occasionally filled with grease, dates were occasionally doubled by extra hub impact, off. Center strikes would sometimes slip past quality control. Copper zinc mix balance still carried quirks of the 1970s production era, and a whole generation decades later would begin checking jars, pocket change, and inherited coin boxes hoping to touch a fragment of minting legend, because the 1970s Lincoln Cent era is remembered not for intentional face values, but for potential errors that collectors obsessively replay in storytelling, sharing in forums, grading only the most dramatic survivors, inflating collector demand by narrative power, market scarcity through authentication, and liquidity through major auction houses when a verifiable error piece is involved, and the 1975 Denver cent story begins with a hook that numismatists understand in their bones: small coin, massive possibility. And imagine the year 1975 itself. America barely a decade out from the Coinage Act shifts of the 1960s, copper still the heart of the 1-cent planchet at 95% copper and 5% zinc alloy by intended design but routinely affected by die wear, hub doubling, questionable collar pressure, occasional broad pseudo-expansion when collaring failed, weak mint mark anomalies from grease fills, and billions of common circulation pieces rolling out daily. But among those billions existed the improbable fraction, minor and major mint errors that escaped detection, later authenticated by collectors through microscopes. Digital scales, assorted magnifiers, loop photographs, XRF alloy scans on questionable transitional claims, and eventually third-party graders whose plastic slabs became time capsules of credibility because in rare coin history, drama alone doesn't equal money. Proof equals money. And this penny would later ride future waves of coin virality, especially during the 2010s and 2020s online revival of error coin storytelling fueled by short-form attention spans, platform sharing loops, and the idea that a coin that usually is 1 cent might in its impossible fraction carry a collector valuation context stretching into millions only if and when the coin is dramatic, uncirculated, verifiable, scientifically contextualized, and authenticated. Because history never remembers the ordinary billions, history remembers the handful of near miraculous defects minted unintentionally but admired intentionally, sold intentionally, and proven intentionally. And the origin of the 1975 D penny is rooted in mechanical repetition, hub force, die alignment, die rotation variance, tolerances, planchet feeding speed, collar seating pressure, die clashing accidents, die deterioration, doubling illusions that confused amateurs but excited experts, and repunched mint mark varieties, RPMs, that attribution guides debated. And when we talk about worth, remember the truth: face value doesn't rise by collecting, perceived market value does, especially around error categories. And the 1975 D penny carries an intentional face value of 1 cent in commerce, but the collector market value of this issue ranges from 1 cent to hundreds depending on grade for normal coins, and to many thousands for authenticated dramatic errors if found in superior uncirculated condition verified by graders, but never literal millions unless a unique error piece fits extraordinary documented conditions proven at auction with scientific evidence and certification. And this is why 1975 D cents are still pull-checked today, weighed, compared against known error references, examined for doubled devices, dramatic cuds, giant clips, die clashes, off-center portraits, broad deformities from collar failure, and photographed endlessly under USB microscopes by dream-driven collectors around the world. And let's dive into the soul of why error coins explode. Because a minting error is the universe leaving a fingerprint, a mechanical whisper stamped in metal that feels human, imperfect, rebellious, improbable, and emotionally contagious. And stories of pocket change fortune grew louder after online marketplaces enabled global visibility and narratives of confirmed error coin auction prices were shared with emotional awe, causing a cognitive bias where people began assuming everyday coins are automatically worth millions when in reality they are worth big money only when authenticated verifiable errors exist. And the 1975 D penny era had no secret $9 million face value attached. It only gained speculative excitement much later through storytelling about mint errors that carried massive sale potential under third-party authentication if found as dramatic error coins. And imagine a collector decades after 1975 holding that penny under a loop, noticing machine doubling on the date, or letters, and feeling heart speed up before realizing that mechanical doubling and double die hub doubling are not the same. Collectors wanting double dies search for strong separation on devices documented in attribution guides, not flat machine doubling worn into shelves of the devices. And what made 1975 D pennies famous were not million-dollar circulation coins but the stories of hub experiments, minor RPM varieties, filled mint marks from grease illusions, occasional heavy off-centers, dramatic clips, and visual die state events that were later encapsulated by grading companies only if dramatic survivors existed. And the year 1975 for the Mint was intense not because alloys were changing. 1975 was pre-1982, so not transitional to zinc, but because production volume pressure always creates errors. And let's talk die deterioration. Steel dies hammering copper planchets continuously will microchip, macrochip, crack, clash, greasefill, tilt, rotate, break, and degrade. And experts decades later studied CUDs, major die breaks, where part of the die breaks away, forming a raised dome on the coin that looks like metal erupting upward. An authenticated major CUDs can carry 5-figure or 6-figure sale potential if verified, and clipped planchet errors occur when the metal strip feeding the blanks overlaps and punches a blank missing a crescent piece out of the circle, creating a dramatic, bitten shape, and a large clean clip with mint rim integrity certified can command high auction prices. Off-center strikes occur when the planchet is not seated fully between the dies, so the portrait looks shifted dramatically, and clean 50% plus off-centers graded and slabbed can fetch high grease-filled errors sometimes weaken or obscure mint marks or devices entirely, creating illusion rarities that amateurs go viral over but graders only authenticate when dramatic clear error evidence exists. Broad strike-style deformities happen when collar pressure fails and the coin is struck without proper constraint, expanding outward differently than intended, and dramatic broad strike deformities authenticated by grading services can achieve large premiums. And die clashes happen when dies strike each other without a planchet, transferring design ghosts into fields, sometimes leaving clash shadows under Lincoln's chin. And dramatic graded clash coins with eye appeal sell high, and repunched mint mark varieties result from multiple impressions of the mint mark manually punched into the die before the hub era fully mechanized. And 1975 cents are debated for minor RPM varieties, but only the strongest clear verified ones are authenticated by attribution services. And although they are valuable varieties, they are not literal $1,000,000 pieces, and many amateurs have mistaken minor machine doubling, circulation damage, or environmental alteration as mint errors until experts explain the difference, and rarity must always be illuminated by evidence, not assumption. Authentication amplifies price but only when error magnitude, condition magnitude, visual appeal magnitude, and certainty magnitude align, and platforms such as major auctions, open marketplaces, private collector networks, and grading services are where real big money circulates. For dramatic authenticated error coins, not exaggerated random coins, and the 1975 penny sits historically in a production bracket where no planned composition transition happened like 1982, but production pressure was enough to spawn a future collector mythos around error potential, and the emotional virality hook attached to pennies is rooted in storytelling psychology. Anyone can own one. Anyone can find one, but only a few ever find the miracle version, so let's talk about how that speculation actually propagated. The mid-2010s saw explosion of coin viral storytelling in video content and short-form social loops where people displayed error coins with captions implying impossible millionaire status, inspiring a global wave to check 1970s pennies. Next, 1976 Lincoln Cent begins in the bustling minting halls of Denver, Colorado, where the Denver Mint operated at full capacity producing billions of coins for everyday circulation. Yet in the background of this seemingly ordinary production year, mechanical imperfections, die wear, and high-speed press operations conspired to create anomalies that decades later would become the stuff of numismatic legend. And while most 1976 cents carry only their intended 1-cent face value, serious collectors have long understood that the real fascination lies in the improbable fraction of coins that bear dramatic errors, doubled dies, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, die cracks, die clashes, and repunched mint marks, because history shows that in every mass-produced coinage run, the mint's machines and operators, despite the highest standards, are subject to forces and limitations of metallurgy, alignment, pressure, human oversight, and sheer volume, and in the case of 1976 Denver's presses were producing millions of Lincoln cents daily, striking 95% copper and 5% zinc planchets with precision, yet the sheer mechanical stress on the dies sometimes created doubling on the date, doubling on Lincoln's bust, or minor die rotations that, while subtle, were detectable under magnification and became a magnet for collectors hunting for rarities. And these anomalies are what turn ordinary cents into potentially high-value era coins, and although the 1976 D is often cited with speculative figures such as $8 million, it is essential to understand that such figures apply only to extremely rare, authenticated, and dramatic era coins slabbed by trusted grading companies like PCGS or NGC, and that ordinary circulation coins from this year remain at face value, yet the legend, the collector mythos, and the viral numismatic storytelling have transformed this ordinary 1-cent coin into a narrative of possibility, treasure, and historical fascination, because in coin collecting, value is not merely what the mint assigned, but what the market confirms through scarcity, condition, documentation, and proof, and the 1976 century of coins also tells a deeper story of the Denver Mint's operations during the mid-1970s, a period when the U.S. economy was navigating post-Vietnam inflation, copper and zinc costs were fluctuating. The Coinage Act of the 1960s had stabilized cent production but left legacy die practices in place, and mint technicians were constantly juggling quality control against the pressure of meeting national coinage quotas, and this industrial dance of precision and potential error is what gives rise to the high-value, high-drama specimens that collectors obsess over, including the famous varieties of off-center strikes that appear as if Lincoln himself has been shifted on the coin, large clips that produce crescents missing from the planchet, major die cracks forming raised ridges and canyons across the fields, die clashes leaving ghost images of the reverse devices impressed onto the obverse, and so repunched mint marks where the D may appear doubled or slightly misaligned, all of which must be authenticated and graded to ensure collector confidence. And this is why serious numismatists study each coin under magnification, weighing it, inspecting it under light, photographing it, and comparing it to documented references in guides and online databases, because while ordinary cents are everywhere, the extraordinary, authentic era coins are rare, and it is this rarity combined with dramatic visual appeal that has historically driven auction prices into 5, 6, or even 7 figures for particularly dramatic pieces, and the collector psychology is fascinating because the 1976 Lincoln cent, like all Lincoln cents of the era, becomes a vessel for storytelling, nostalgia, and the thrill of discovery, where one person's pocket change can turn into another person's life-changing acquisition. And although the average person never sees a high-grade error, the internet era has transformed awareness, making viral videos, auction posts, and online forums where these coins are analyzed and displayed, inspiring a new generation of collectors to check old jars, drawers, and rolls of change for anomalies, and the mechanics behind these errors are equally compelling. The presses strike planchets with immense force. Hub and die systems align with microscopic tolerances, yet steel dies fatigue. Over time, collar pressure shifts, and human operators, no matter how careful, cannot detect every subtle anomaly, producing the rare chance for something extraordinary to emerge, and each type of error carries its own historical narrative and potential value. Double die obverse Lincoln cents from 1976 may show 2 distinct impressions of the date or lettering. Off-center strikes can range from mild shifts to dramatic migrations of the portrait. Clipped planchets may be small or large but create an unmistakable shape. Die cracks may begin as hairlines but evolve into large raised features. Die clashes imprint the ghost of one die onto the opposite side of the coin, and RPMs or repunched mint marks show the history of manual interventions on the dies. And because of the science, the artistry, and the rarity of such coins, collectors, historians, and investors pay close attention, often collaborating through professional associations, numismatic clubs, and grading services to verify authenticity, document provenance, and secure a slab certificate, and the market recognizes these as tangible evidence of minting history that is both mechanical and cultural, because the coins themselves are frozen moments of industrial precision mixed with human error, and the story of value lies not in numbers printed by the mint but in the rarity, the drama, the eye appeal, and the confirmation of authenticity. And in the case of 1976 D, the allure comes from its intersection of historical context, mechanical possibility, and collector fascination, inspiring thousands of people to examine everyday change with meticulous care, photographing anomalies, checking for doubling, off-center strikes, cuds, broad strikes, die cracks, lamination errors, and more, because every coin is a potential piece of history, a mechanical accident preserved in copper, and a potential viral story. And collectors understand that the process is scientific as well as narrative. Condition matters. Grading matters, provenance matters, authentication matters, and public interest matters, because when a dramatic era coin from 1976 appears in a major auction, the combination of scarcity, visual impact, and collector demand creates extraordinary financial outcomes, sometimes reaching high five-figure or even six-figure auction results for truly dramatic specimens. And this is why collectors invest in knowledge, magnification tools, light boxes, coin scales, photography equipment, and reference guides, because a single moment of detection can uncover a coin that transforms a casual collector into a legend in the hobby. And while ordinary pennies remain mundane, the extraordinary 1976 errors embody a combination of historical timing, mechanical chance, and market demand that is compelling to both serious and aspiring collectors. And the story of the Denver Mint presses in 1976 is one of industrial ambition, human oversight, and mechanical imperfection producing coins that, decades later, inspire awe, research, and the thrill of discovery. And when auction houses showcase slabbed-era coins from 1976, videos, social media posts, and blogs amplify the narrative, turning a simple 1-cent coin into a viral sensation and connecting it to the broader history of Lincoln cents, the U.S. Mint, and the evolution of numismatic storytelling. And this excitement is why collectors often check old jars of coins, rolls, and inherited collections for anomalies, because the very possibility of discovery drives engagement, education, and sometimes life-changing financial outcomes, and the most dramatic errors like bold double dies, heavy off-centers, large clean clipped planchets, major die breaks forming cuds, die clashes, repunched mint marks, and lamination errors must be authenticated and slabbed to reach maximum value, because unverified claims hold no weight in the collector market. And this scientific authentication turns mechanical accidents into verified pieces of numismatic history with clear provenance, and the viral energy around 1976 coins continues because the coins themselves are accessible, historically significant, and capable of producing extraordinary visual and monetary results. And while face value remains 1 cent, market reality demonstrates that certified, dramatic, visually striking era coins can achieve enormous premiums when scarcity, grade, and eye appeal align, and the 1976 cent is now both a piece of Americana and a symbol of the possibility that everyday objects may contain extraordinary hidden stories. Next, 1982 No Mint Mark Lincoln cent occupies a unique and fascinating place in U.S. numismatic history because this year represents a pivotal transition period for the 1-cent coin, marking the shift from primarily copper composition to a predominantly zinc planchet with a thin copper plating. And while the majority of these coins are common circulation pieces worth their face value of 1 cent, the story of value, error, and collectible rarity emerges in the small fraction of coins that exhibit dramatic anomalies, misstrikes, misalignments, or composition surprises, and collectors who understand the historical and mechanical context know that the U.S. Mint, under intense production pressure, balancing public demand, metal cost concerns, and industrial efficiency, produced millions of coins across Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. But in 1982 specifically, the Philadelphia Mint struck both copper, 95% copper, 5% zinc, and new predominantly zinc, 97.5% zinc with 2.5% copper plating coins, and in doing so, some coins emerged without any mint mark at all, further complicating the collector landscape and creating an aura of scarcity. But scarcity only applies in a certified, authenticated, and dramatic era sense, because ordinary circulation coins are common and unremarkable. Yet collectors have been drawn for decades to the potential for rare errors such as off-center strikes where Lincoln's portrait appears shifted dramatically to one side, major doubled dies where the date or devices appear doubled due to hub or die anomalies, clipped planchets producing crescents or partial coins, die cracks that leave raised fissures and lines across the coin fields, die clashes leaving ghost images from one die impressed on the other, lamination errors from poor bonding of the copper plating over zinc cores, broad strikes where collar failure allows the coin to expand unevenly, and the now famous transitional alloy errors where some 1982 no-mint mark cents were struck on residual copper planchets or experimental blanks that deviate slightly from standard composition, and the numismatic value of such coins skyrockets not because of face value, but because of rarity, condition, dramatic eye appeal, historical documentation, and verified certification through grading services like PCGS and NGC. And while ordinary collectors may only ever see the base circulation coins, professional numismatists and treasure hunters scrutinize every coin under magnification, measuring weight, inspecting edges, photographing details, and comparing subtle differences against published references, because the difference between an ordinary 1982 cent and a potentially life-changing era coin can be as small as a few millimeters of off-centering, a minor doubling on the date, or a faint die crack running across Lincoln's bust. And this meticulous analysis is what separates viral legend coins from common pocket change, and the 1982 no-mint mark issue is particularly compelling because it intersects with the transition from copper to zinc, creating hybrid possibilities, compositions that appear differently under X-ray fluorescence analysis, and minor variances in color, weight, and sound when dropped on hard surfaces, which collectors sometimes use as preliminary indicators of an unusual coin. And the stories of 1982 cents exploding in collector attention surged dramatically in the early 2000s when online forums, auction sites, and viral social media posts highlighted extraordinary examples, documenting sales where authenticated dramatic errors achieved 5-figure or even 6-figure premiums, depending on grade, visual impact, rarity, and collector interest. And the psychological effect is profound because casual coin owners suddenly realize that pennies they thought mundane might contain rare anomalies, creating a global wave of checking jars, drawers, and rolls for potential treasure, and historical context adds layers to the narrative because 1982 represents a year when the U.S. Mint faced rising copper costs, leading to the zinc transition, and during this period, mechanical stress, die wear, operator oversight, and volume pressure naturally produced the anomalies that today drive collector fever, and major error categories for this year include double die obverse coins where doubling appears on the date, motto, or Lincoln's profile. Dramatic off-center strikes that preserve at least 50% of design, major clipped planchets with clean edges, die cracks forming visually significant raised lines or blobs, lamination errors where the copper layer peels exposing zinc cores, broad strikes where collar failure produced coins slightly larger than intended, die clashes imprinting ghost images of devices from one side to the other, and subtle varieties such as partial or faint mint marks that escape detection during minting. And each of these error types carries a story of mechanical imperfection intersecting with historical chance, and collectors today use photographic documentation, magnification, digital scales, lighting, and reference guides to validate their finds because market value is only realized when the error is authenticated and slabbed by a trusted third-party grading service, transforming an improbable mistake into a recognized numismatic treasure. And the viral energy around 1982 no-mint mark cents stems from the combination of historical transition, mechanical imperfection, rarity, visual appeal, collector psychology, auction results, and the human fascination with discovery. Because while millions of ordinary coins circulate, only a tiny fraction contain the anomalies that command premium prices, and these premiums are amplified when coins are preserved in uncirculated condition, show dramatic error characteristics, and are certified for authenticity and grade, creating stories that ripple through auction houses, forums, blogs, and social media, and collectors are inspired not only by the potential financial reward but by the historical narrative that each coin represents a snapshot of minting operations, mechanical limitations, material experimentation, and industrial history, and the 1982 no-mint mark cent also intersects with broader Lincoln cent history, linking the modern era of coin production with decades of tradition, design, and technical evolution, all of which collectors reference when authenticating coins, writing articles, curating collections, or preparing auction lots. And the excitement continues today as collectors hunt for dramatic era coins in bulk rolls, inherited collections, coin boxes, and circulation finds, photographing, weighing, comparing, and cross-referencing each example against historical documentation, because even subtle anomalies can transform a common coin into a market sensation. And viral collector stories often feature dramatic examples such as double die obverse with strong separation on the date, major off-center strikes displacing Lincoln's portrait halfway off the planchet, clipped planchets that are both visually striking and structurally intact, major die breaks forming raised canyons or blobs across the field, lamination or plating errors revealing zinc cores, broad strikes creating coins that seem larger than standard, die clashes producing ghost images of Lincoln's bust or reverse wheat stalks, and even partial or faint mint marks from operator error during a high volume production run, and the combination of rarity, visual appeal, condition, and authentication is what drives collector demand and explains why extraordinary specimens can achieve massive premiums, because while the mint's intent was to produce uniform coins, the mechanical reality of presses, dies, and human oversight creates small chances for anomalies, and when these anomalies are discovered, documented, and certified, they become historical artifacts, tangible evidence of industrial processes, and potential life-changing collectibles. And the market has recognized this through auction results, grading certifications, social media virality, forum discussions, and collector-driven storytelling. And the 1982 no-mint mark cent is a prime example of how a common coin can intersect with historical significance, industrial imperfection, and collector psychology to produce extraordinary opportunity. Because every coin represents a potential story, every error carries the weight of industrial chance, and every authenticated specimen has the potential to achieve remarkable market value, and this is why collectors continue to examine every coin under magnification, weighing, photographing, comparing against guides, and seeking certification, because the difference between an ordinary penny and a legendary era is documentation, grade, rarity, eye appeal, and collector recognition. And in the case of 1982 no-mint mark cents, the convergence of historical context, alloy transition, mechanical anomalies, and collector awareness creates a fertile ground for viral coin stories, auction excitement, and the thrill of discovery, because ordinary coins pass unnoticed, but dramatic errors captured, certified, and shared capture imagination, drive engagement, inspire research, and sometimes create life-changing financial outcomes.